Okay, can you tell me about yourself?
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. So, I have around 3.6 years of experience as a Java backend developer, and currently I'm working with HCL Technologies. And there I am primarily involved in developing and maintaining the microservices based application using Java, Spring Boot, and REST APIs. And in my current project, I work on design backend services, implementing business logic, and integrating different systems. So I have hands-on experience with technologies like Spring Boot, Spring Data JPA, microservices architecture, RESTful APIs, Maven, Git, and databases like MySQL and MongoDB. And I also have experience with API integration and debugging production issues. So apart from the development, I also focus on writing clean and optimized code, like improving the application performance, and also collaborating with the like cross-functional teams like QA and DevOps and tester teams. Yeah, so this is what is all about myself and my overall experience.
Okay, so can you tell me about your current project?
Currently, I am working on a microservices based HR management system. So, the project is designed to manage employee data and process the leaves and payrolls. So, basically, these payrolls comes from the third party system. So, in this project, we are using Java and Spring Boot to build RESTful microservices, and the front end is developed using the Angular, and for the database we are using MongoDB, and the application is developed in the cloud environment, and we also like use Azure functions for processing some event based task. So my main responsibilities include developing RESTful APIs and implementing business logic and integrating with the third party APIs, and also whatever the production issues come, so we also involve in fixing that. So I also work on writing unit test and optimize the queries, and collaborate with other teams, as I said, like QA, DevOps, and testing teams. So overall the system helps to automate HR operations and ensure that the employee leave events are processed correctly and sent to the client system for the further processing. So yeah.
So, is your project only payroll related or does it handle other HR functions as well?
No, our project is only payroll related. So it is basically an HR integration team. So it is not only payroll related, I mean. So payroll is one of the part basically, but the system mainly handles the employee leave events and HR processing data. So whenever an employee applies for leave in a third party HR system, so our application basically receives the event and it processes it on the business rules. So and once it is done, then it sends the process data to the client system. So based on the leave information, it can also impact the payroll or insurance calculations and all. So, yeah.
Okay, so in your system, so whenever you apply any leave or any employee applies any leave, so what happens basically behind the scenes? Can you tell me the complete into and flow?
Yeah, sure. So, like when an employee applies for a leave in the third party HR system, the request is first stored and validated in that system itself. And once that leave request is created or approved, then a leave event is generated. Okay. So this leave event is then sent to our system through the API call or event trigger, and our microservices receives the request, and first step we do is to validate the employee information. So like employee ID, leave dates, leave type, and other required fields, so that those things we validate. Okay, and once the validation is done, the request goes through the business rules processing. So for example, the system checks the things like leave balance, type of leave, and whether the leave impacts payroll or insurance calculations. So once the processing is completed, then our service prepares the final payload and sends the processed leave information to the client system. And this client system then updates their records, and if required, it adjusts the things like payroll deduction or any kinds of insurance calculation. So all those things are done. So yeah, so my role is in this to follow mainly like developing and maintaining the backend microservices using Java and Spring Boot, and handling the API integration. And in that, I also implement the business logic and resolve any issue if the processing fails in the production. So yeah, so this is what is the like overall the flow of this.
So, what will happen if the client system is down when you send the process data?
Yeah, if the client system is unavailable, then we do not lose the event. The request is logged and stored so that it can be retrieved later. So once the client system becomes available again, then the pending events are processed and sent again. So yeah.
Okay, so can you tell me what is the most complex scenario you have handled in this project?
Yeah, so complex scenario we like once we handled was the duplicate leave events coming from the third party HR system. So sometimes the external system would send the same leave event multiple times due to retries or network issues. So if our system processed those events again, then it could lead to incorrect records or duplicate updates in the client system. So in order to solve this, we implemented a unique event identifier check in our services. So whenever a leave event is received, then our system first checks whether the event ID has already been processed earlier, and if it already exists in our database, then we skip the processing and just log the duplicate request. So yeah, so that is what and another challenge also like we have received was when the client system was temporarily unavailable and while sending the processed data, then the in that case we had to make sure that the event was not lost. Okay, so we stored the event in a pending state and implemented a retry mechanism to resend the data once the client system like becomes available. So yeah, so these are the like some complex scenario we have received. Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me the difference between Spring Framework and Spring Boot?
Uh, Spring framework like is a comprehensive framework we can say. So that is used to build a Java applications, but it usually requires a lot of manual configuration such as setting up beans, XML or Java configuration files and configuring application servers. So developers often need to deploy the application on an external server like Apache Tomcat. Because of this, the setup and configuration process can be more complex and time consuming. So on the other hand, Spring Boot is built on top of the Spring framework, and that is mainly used to simplify the application development, and it provides auto configuration. So that means that it automatically configures many components based on the dependencies present in the project. So it also comes with the embedded servers like we have the Apache Tomcat and all. So that allows the developers to run applications directly without deploying them to the external server. So all of this basically makes the development faster and simpler and like it is kind of convenient compared to the traditional Spring applications. So that is what basically the main difference between these two.
Okay, so how does auto configuration works in Spring Boot?
Yeah, Spring Boot uses auto configuration to automatically configure the application based on the dependencies available in the class path. So when the application starts, then Spring Boot checks the dependencies present in the project and automatically creates the required beans and configurations. So that basically reduces the need for manual configuration. So yeah, that's how the auto configuration works.
So, which annotation actually enables this auto configuration?
Yeah, it is enable auto configuration annotation. So it is basically internally included inside the at the rate of Spring Boot application. Yeah.
Okay, so how does Spring Boot know which auto configuration class to load?
Yeah, Spring Boot reads the I think Spring.factories file So that is basically located inside the meta inf. So this file contains the list of auto configuration classes. So when the application starts, then Spring Boot loads these classes and decides which configuration should be applied based on the conditions.
Okay. And do you know the conditional annotations in auto configuration?
Yeah, auto configuration works using the conditional annotations, and these conditional annotations decide like whether a configuration should be applied or not. So we have various annotations like add rate of conditional on class, add rate of conditional on bean, add rate of conditional on property, and conditional on missing bean. So yeah, so these are the conditional annotations are there.
Okay. Can you tell me what are the types of dependency injection?
Yeah, there are three types. One is a constructor injection, and then setter injection and field injection.
So, which dependency injection is more preferred and why?
Yeah, constructor injection is generally preferred over setter and field injection because it ensures that all required dependencies are provided when the object is created. So this basically makes the class immutable and more reliable. So since the dependencies cannot be changed after initialization, so it also makes the code easier to test because dependencies can be passed directly while creating the object in unit test. So another advantage is that it helps detecting circular dependencies early at a startup, so that improves the application stability. Yeah, so because of these benefits like immutability and better testability and safer dependency management, constructor injection is considered like best practice in the Spring applications. So yeah.
Okay, so then why do you think the field and setter injection still exist? So we can only have the constructor injection, right?
Constructor injection is generally preferred, but field and setter injection still exist because they are useful in few conditions. So setter injection is helpful when dependency is optional or when it may need to be changed after the object is created. So in such cases, setter injection provides flexibility because the dependency can be injected or modified later. So that's the reason. And field injection is mainly used because it is simple and requires less boilerplate code, so especially in small applications or quick prototypes, so we can use that. So however, it is not recommended for large applications because it makes the testing harder and hides the class dependencies. So yeah, so while constructor injection is the best practice for mandatory dependencies, but still Spring provides setter and field injection to support optional dependencies and flexibility in certain scenarios. So yeah.
Okay, can you tell me the Spring Bean life cycle?
Yeah, the bean life cycle in Spring framework basically describes the step that the bean goes through from its creation to destruction inside the Spring IOC container. So first, Spring instantiates the bean. So that means that it creates the object of the class, and after that, Spring populates the properties. So where it injects the required dependencies into the bean and using dependencies injection. So next next one is the initialization phase. So that happens where the Spring calls the initialization methods such as like we have post construct and all, or some custom init methods also if they are defined. So once initialization is completed, then the bean is ready for use and can be used by the application. So finally, when the application context is closed, then Spring calls the destroy method. So like we have added a pre-destroy annotation. So to perform, so this is used to perform the cleanup before the bean is removed from the memory. So yeah, so this is what is the bean Spring Bean life cycle.
Okay, what is the difference between Bean Factory and application context?
Yeah, Bean Factory is the basic container that manages the beans and their life cycle. So it has some limited methods, and application context we can say like advanced container. So that extends basically Bean Factory, and it provides some additional features like we have event handling, then internationalize and add automatic bean post processing. So there are some additional these kind of advantages. So yeah.
Okay, and what is this event handling and internationalization?
Yeah, event handling basically it is a different components of an application to uh, communicate with each other using events. So that happens in this Spring. So that is what. So one component can publish an event, and other component can listen to an event and react to it without being tightly coupled. So that is what is the event handling. So like let's say for example, when user registers in an application, then the system can publish an event like user registered event, and other components can listen to this event and perform the action like sending a welcome message or logging activity. So that is what is called event handling. And internationalization means that means the supporting multiple languages in an application, so that the users from different regions can use the system in their preferred language. So like in Spring, usually it is implemented in the message property files. Like we write like message underscore. If it is French, then underscore fr dot properties, and if it is English, then message underscore en dot properties. So like that. So like that we use and corresponding languages we can put, and it will automatically pick from the specific language, so as per the requirement. Yeah.
Okay, and can we use Spring Boot without the Spring framework?
Spring Boot without Spring? No. So actually, Spring Boot is built on top of the Spring framework. So that is what I am aware of. And so internally, I think it still uses Spring features only. So like we have basic features of Spring like dependency injection, beans, and application context and all. So all these can be used in Spring Boot as well. So it is just like pre-configuring the things to Spring to make a standard way of and ready for use for the developers, and with to doing the minimal configuration in the Spring itself. That is what is Spring Boot. Yeah. So yeah, we cannot do that.
Okay, do you know what is no such bean definition exception?
Yeah, no such bean definition that occurs when the Spring framework container cannot find a bean that the application is trying to inject or retrieve from the Spring Boot application. So this usually happens when the bean is not defined and not scanned by Spring. That is what I mean. It happens. So suppose we have a service, let's say user service we have, okay, and that is a service class. And now suppose it another class we try to inject it, okay. So so let's suppose we have like REST controller and some service, let's say order service, we are trying to inject it instead of by mistake like user service. So since this order service has not been defined anywhere in the project, so at this point of time we can get like whenever Spring will try to find it in the application context, but it will fail, then it will throw no such bin definition exception. Yeah.
And what is no unique bean definition exception? So, what is the difference between this and no such bean definition?
Yeah, no such bin definition, as I told you, like whenever Spring cannot find any bean of the required type or name in the container, then that happens to no such bean definition exception. And no unique bean definition exception means like that exception basically occurs when multiple beans of same time exist, but Spring does not know which one to inject. So that is what no unique bean definition exception. So suppose we have two beans of the same type. Let's say we have a service class called let's say one is the like let's say we are doing some payment, okay. So one we have add service, then we have the class name as PayPal payment service, and that implements the payment service. And again we have another service class called, let's say, strip payment service, so that also implement a payment service, okay. Now the injection, whenever suppose we are doing the injection of the payment service, so ultimately this payment service is being implemented by two other classes. One was the PayPal payment service, one was the strip payment service. Now, since Spring finds two bins of the payment of the type like this payment service, then it cannot decide which one it has to use. Then it will result like no unique bin definition exception. So that's what it is. Yeah.
So how can we fix it?
Yeah. So for that we can I think use add rate of qualifier or add rate of primary. Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me what is the purpose of Spring Boot starter?
Yeah, the purpose of Spring Boot Starter is to simplify the dependency management and reduce configuration while developing the applications. So a starter is a like predefined set of dependencies that are commonly used together for a specific functionality. So instead of adding like multiple libraries manually, like developers can include a single starter dependency and all required dependencies are automatically added to the project. So this basically helps developers to focus like more on writing the business logic rather than the managing configurations and dependencies. So like for example, let's say we have a Spring Boot starter web. So that starts automatically, like that includes the dependencies needed to build web applications such as like Spring MVC or JSON processing libraries, or let's say embedded server is also we want to add. So we can simply use Spring Boot starter web, and manually we don't have to do anything. It will be all be will be taken care of like by Spring Boot. Yeah.
Okay, so in microservices, can you tell me what happens if one microservice is down?
Yeah, if in a microservice architecture, if one microservices goes down, then it should not cause the entire system to fail. So the dependent service may not be able to get a response from that service. So that can lead to delays or errors for the specific functionality. Okay, so in order to handle such kind of situation, so we have mechanisms like resilience 4J or Hystrix, so that are used to implement the circuit breaker pattern, and the circuit breaker stops repeated calls to the failing services and can return a fallback response instead. So this basically helps to prevent cascading failures and keeps the rest of the system running while the affected microservices being restored. So yeah.
Okay, so in microservices, how do you ensure data consistency between microservices? Because all of them have their own databases, right?
Yeah, in a microservices architecture, like data consistency is maintained using the like techniques like event-driven communication or distributed transaction and eventual consistency. So instead of sharing a single database, so each microservices manages its own data, and when a change happens, then it publishes an event to inform other services. So that is how it maintains the consistency. So we have messaging systems like Apache Kafka or RabbitMQ. So that are often used to send these kind of events so that the other microservices can update their data accordingly. So in many cases, the Saga pattern is used to manage the distributed transactions across the services. So this approach basically ensures that even if the service updates data at a different times, still the system eventually becomes consistent without tightly coupling the services. So that is how we can achieve that. Yeah.
Okay, do you know the difference between a strong consistency and eventual consistency?
Yeah, sure. So strong consistency means that once the data is updated, then all services immediately see the same updates repeated value. Okay. And eventual consistency means the data may not be updated immediately in all services, but after some time, all services will become consistent. So that is what is the main difference between these two. And like most microservice architecture use eventual consistency because service has like separate database. So of course many of the times we cannot do the strong consistency at the same time. Yeah, but it all depends on the scenario, like how and what requirement is, and in which microservices we are doing this. So yeah.
And what happens if a step in the Saga transaction itself fails?
Yeah, if a step in Saga itself pattern fails, then the system triggers like compensating transactions. Okay, so these compensating transactions undo the previous successful step to bring the system back to the consistent state. So, for example, if the order creation succeeded and but payment got failed, the system like triggers a cancel order in action. So it will cancel out everything. So yeah, so that is how it can be maintained.
Okay, and what is the difference between client side and server side service discovery?
Yeah, in a microservice architecture, service discovery helps like services to locate and communicate with each other dynamically instead of using the hard-coded URLs. So that is the concept of service discovery. So in client side service discovery, the client services is responsible for finding the location for another services, and the client first queries a service registry like you have Eureka to get the list of available instances of the target service, and after that the client itself chooses one instance using a load balancing strategy and sends the request directly to the services. So that is what is the client side service discovery. And in server side service discovery, the client sends the request to a load balancer, and the load balancer queries the service registry to find the available service instances. So and then the load balancer forwards the request to one of the instances. So tools like we have Ribbon is there, and there are another tools also that can act as a load balancer in that approach. So that is what is the basic difference between these two, this client side service discovery and the server side the service discovery.
And what is the difference between API gateway and load balancer?
Yeah, API gateway and load balancer both are having the different roles in microservice architecture. So a load balancer is like mainly responsible for distributing incoming network traffic across the multiple instances of the same service. So that is used to improve the availability and scalability. Okay, and API gateway on the other hand, it acts like single entry point for all the client requests. Okay, so whatever the client requests are coming to the microservices, so this API gateway will act as single entry point. So it is not only routes the request to the appropriate microservices, but it can also handle the additional responsibilities like authentication, rate limiting, and logging, request transformation. So all that also it can do apart from the single entry point. So that is what is the API gateway. So like Spring Cloud Gateway and also that is we are using for that.
Okay, so can you tell me what happens internally when you create an object using the new keyword first time?
Yeah, when an object is created using the new keyword in Java, then several steps happen internally. So first the JVM checks whether the class is already loaded into memory, and if it is not loaded then class loader loads it, and after that memory is allocated in the heap memory for the new object. So once the memory is allocated, then default values are assigned to all instance variables. So like for example, 0 is assigned for the integer and false for the boolean and all, and next the constructor of the class is executed. So that initializes the object with the required values and provided during the object creation. And after that, finally, the reference or the memory address of that object is returned and assigned to the reference variable. So that allows the program to access and use the created object. So that is what happens behind the scenes.
And where is this object stored when we create it using this new keyword?
Yeah, this object is stored inside the heap memory, and the reference variables that points to that object is stored in the stack memory.
And what happens if there is no constructor has been defined in the class?
Yeah, if no constructor has been defined, then Java automatically creates a default constructor during the compilation.
And do you know, can we create an object without using the new keyword?
Without, yes, we can create. I think there are a couple of ways are there. So one is reflection, and then using cloning also I think we can do. and then using the deserialization also that is created, and I think through factory methods also it can be done. Yeah.
Okay, can you tell me what is the difference between double equal to and dot equals in Java?
Yeah, double equal to checks whether two reference variable points to the same memory location. So that means that it compares object references. On the other hand, dot equals is a method used to compare the contents or logical equality of two objects. So for example, two different string objects with the same content will return true and for dot equals, but it will return false for double equal to. So yeah.
And can you tell me the difference between hash map and concurrent hash map?
Yeah, hash map is not thread safe. So that means that simultaneous access by multiple threads can cause inconsistent behavior or corruption. And concurrent hash map is thread safe, and that achieves the concurrency using the bucket level locking. So that allows the multiple threads to read and write to different segments simultaneously. So that happens without locking the entire map. So that is the difference between these two, and also hash map allows nulls as a key, whereas concurrent hash map does not allow that. So that's the difference between these two.
Okay, and how does hash map internally implemented in Java?
Yeah, hash map uses an array of buckets. So when a key value pair is inserted, then the hash code of the key determines the bucket. Okay, so if two keys have the same hash code, like if so that basically the case called collision, then the entire are stored in a linked list. So that used to happen in Java 7, or like tree structure is being used in Java 8. So when the list exceeded the threshold, so then that is how it is done. And retrieval uses the hash to find the bucket and then compare keys using dot equals. So yeah, so that is what is how the hash map internally implemented.
Okay, and what is immutability in Java and how do you make a class immutable? Can you tell me in very short?
Yeah, immutability means basically once an object is created, then it cannot be modified. So to make a class immutable, we can declare it as final, and then we can make all the fields as a private final. Okay, and we can provide only getter methods and avoid exposing the reference to mutable objects. So like example, for example, we have a string class in Java, so that is immutable. So yeah.
And what is functional interface in Java 8?
Yeah, functional interface has exactly one abstract method and can be implemented using the Lambda expressions. So, like we have predicate functions, consumer, supplier. So all are the functional interface. So functional interface can also have the default and static methods. And we can also use add rate of functional interface on top of that functional interface to make sure that it follows the rules of functional interface. Yeah, so that is what is the functional interface.
And what is optional? Do you know that?
Yeah, optional is a container object to avoid null pointer exceptions. So it represents either a value or empty. So that is what is the optional interface. And methods like it has methods like or else, if present, and map. So these all are used to safely handle the potential null values. So
Okay, and what is the difference between concurrent hash map and collections dot synchronized map?
yeah, this collections and dot synchronized map log the entire map for any operation. So that reduces the concurrency. So that is what is the collections dot synchronized map. And concurrent hash map uses the bucket level locking. So that allows the multiple threads to read write the different segments concurrently. So that is the difference between these two.
So you have worked on Maven, right?
Yeah, I have worked.
So tell me what is Maven and why it is used?
Yeah, Maven is like build automation tool. We can say so that manages the dependencies, compiles code, and also it packages the applications. and it also handles the like some different project life cycle phases, like uh, we can say Maven clean install. So it will like kind of, so it will compile, test, package, install and deploy. So all those things we can do. So that ensures the consistent builds across the different environments. So that's the use of Maven. So we don't have to so major advantage is like we don't have to manually include the jars, and also it will automatically whatever we will be writing in the dependencies we would have added, so those it will automatically download and we can use that.
So how do you resolve the dependency conflicts in Maven?
Yeah, dependency conflicts can be resolved using the dependency management section in pom.xml. So that specify the version explicitly there, and we can use the exclusion tag also to exclude the like transitive dependencies.
Okay, can you tell me what is Git and why it is used?
Yeah, Git is a distributed version control system, so that tracks the changes in source code and allows multiple developers to collaborate and support branching, merging, and rollback and all. So basically, we all are developing the different parts of the code. So ultimately, we would like to merge all of that, and we want to get have the track of that, so who had made what changes, so all those kind of stuffs we want to do. So for that we are using git. So that is basically version control system. So yeah.
Okay, so what is the difference between Git merge and rebase?
Merge basically combines the branches and creates a new commit, so that basically preserves the history, and rebase moves or rewrites commits on top of another branch. So that's the difference between these two. So uh, that gives the cleaner and linear history. So that's what is the difference.
Okay, and what is cloud computing?
Cloud computing cloud computing basically provides on demand computing resources over the internet, like servers, storage and databases. So like we have examples like AWS, Azure and GCP. So that offers a scalable, reliable and manageable services. So yeah, that is what is cloud computing.
Okay, so which cloud platform have you worked with and what services have you used?
Yeah, I have worked with Microsoft Azure in my current project. So primarily the Azure functions for the processing events, and also Azure Blob Storage I have used for storing files, and Azure App Services to host microservices. So these are the most of the services I have used mostly.
Okay, so what is lazy and what is eager loading in JPA?
Yeah, lazy loading basically fetches the related entries only when needed, and that saves the memory ultimately. And eager loading basically fetches the related entities immediately. Okay, so that may increase the memory usage, but it also avoids the lazy initialization exception. So it all depends on the scenarios when we have to use.
And what is cascade type all?
Yeah, this cascade type all basically means all operations like persist, merge, remove, and refresh and all. So they performed on a parent entity will like also cascade to its child entities. So that simplifies the entity management.
And what is the difference between at the rate of transactional and programmatic transaction management in Spring?
Yeah, so add transactional we can say is a declarative, and that is management by Spring proxies. Okay, and programmatic way of doing the transaction management, so that requires basically manual controlling of transaction template or platform transaction manager. So that has to be done manually in the code. So that's the main difference between these two.